newly formed tropical storm, and it has multiplied quite a bit over the past 12 hours here across the Eastern Pacific, jumping in the past 6 hours from a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm up to 60 miles per hour. So as I said, winds right now are 60 miles per hour, pressure 95 kilometers per hour. Pressure is in the high 990s, 990 millibars, pressure of 29.50 inches. Moving off towards the west-northwest at 14 miles per hour, 22 kilometers per hour. And we are low end on the TECO scale, only 4 points on the TECO scale for Juliette right now. So if you're checking the storm where it is right now at home, 17.6 degrees north, 114.5 degrees west, which is 241 miles away from Socorro Island, 471 from Cabo San Lucas, 517 from San Carlos, 630 from Punta Abrejos, and 811 from Guadalupe Island. All of these primarily on the coastline of Mexico, except for 2 islands. The Socorro Island is just towards the east-northeast of the storm right now, and it is going to be moving away from that, so not really going to be seeing too impacted Socorro Island. So a fairly small wind field as it goes. There's an island just towards the northwest of the storm that is reporting tropical storm force winds, although impacts aren't going to be too bad on that island there. No watches or warnings are, of course, in effect as the storm is far away from any land areas and will remain so for the duration of its life, and it is pretty standard for most, with 95 to 98% of most Eastern Pacific tropical cyclones that tend to stay very far away from any land areas, and Juliette is no different. So the primary threat, as per is again the standard with most Eastern Pacific tropical cyclones, is rip currents. If you plan on visiting any beach areas along the coastline of Mexico, especially westward-facing coastlines, be sure that you are up to date, whether it be talking to around the areas or with local authorities or the Mexican authorities here. Be sure that you are up to date with your rip current statements, and know if you do end up planning to go to any beach areas, please do make sure that you are up to date on how to combat rip currents and know the signs of it, and know how to get out of it if you are getting trapped in it. They are known to be very dangerous and have known to cause fatalities. Even if something thousands of miles offshore. An example that primarily to me comes with Lorenzo in 2019. So the track forecast looks like this right now. We do think that it'll become a hurricane, albeit very briefly. National Weather forecast is 75 miles per hour. I do think that there's a little bit room for identification based on traffic identification probabilities of 40 to 45%, believe it or not. Trading into environment low by Thursday morning, and then by Friday morning as well, 24 hours later, it'll be nothing more than a fairy tale, and in the past of our distant minds, as the remnant of Juliette is right here off the coast of Mexico. Track forecast is pretty certain, pretty set in stone here for the next record here as well. There is a little bit of wiggle room past day 3, day 4, and day 5. You know, where does it go after that? We'll have to wait and see on that, but it'll be like a by then. Forecasting a hurricane in 24 hours. You can see that H dot 11 a.m. Tuesday there. Forecasting 75 miles per hour. I do think that there's a little bit of chance for it to get a little bit stronger than that, maybe for a 6-hour period, based on those identification probabilities. They are up at 40 to 45% right now, believe it or not, so maybe a little bit stronger by then. AMSU is off the curb, off the deep end, I should say, down at 30 miles per hour for the storm right now, maybe even a little bit weaker than that. It is up the deep end. SATCON at 40 miles per hour, though most estimates are solidly at 60 miles per hour. But the big thing here, we got an ASCAP pass that got 60 mile per hour winds. So that is why we are running with 60 miles per hour in agreement with the National Hurricane Center. So the model tracks right now indicating that the storm is fairly set in stone to make a gradual northward curve. So where does it go past day 3 and day 4? Of course, it'll be a remnant low by that point. The HWR curves it back off towards the northeast, though most of the model runs take it back off towards the west-southwest. The HFS model run there, you can see the HFAI, that purple run there on the western side of the track line here, and the AVNI, that is the GFS, taking the storm back off towards the southwest after being a bit of a looping situation. We'll have to wait and see on that though. You can see that black OFCI model run there. That is the National Hurricane Center forecast track. Pretty much in the middle through the duration of it, though. The general model suites, they are in regular agreement with the storm tracking off towards the west-northwest here, with a gradual northward curve weakening as it goes into the middle to later part of this coming week. And by the weekend, it'll be nothing more than a fancy tale off the coastline of Mexico. Pretty good. Going to be a pretty quick end here to Juliette over the next few days, as it remains offshore. You know, it's just another run-of-the-mill average Eastern Pacific average run-of-the-mill Eastern Pacific tropical cyclone. I apologize. over the next few days here. You know, this kind of thing happens pretty standardly for September tropical events here. Though not too uncertain on the track forecast past day 3, day 4. Residents in Mexico, these are the DEFS on normal, by the way. Residents in Mexico shouldn't be too concerned with Juliette, although the rip current threat is going to be the primary hazard. You can see those colors there indicating that the storm will be fairly weak as it goes into the later part of the next week, but still a little bit of a question mark. How strong does the storm get in the short term? There is still some room for the storm to get a little bit stronger. You can see those darker colors indicating a much stronger storm. Maybe a few ensemble members do indicate a pressure below 990 millibars. It could be that, honestly. But I think a 80 mile per hour forecast peak is right on the money right now regarding Juliette's forecast peak. I don't think that it'll get any stronger than that, though. It could squeeze it out, but I would have to make it up pretty much now. It's running out of time to really get any significant intensification going right now, and it's trailing under some wind shear at the moment. So I don't think that we're going to be seeing anything really up towards the higher South Pacific categories. Could be category 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't really think that we're going to see anything up near those levels. A low to mid category 1 peak is the probable outcome of Juliette. It's going to be interesting to see how strong the storm gets over the next 24 hours, though. So water temperatures are looking pretty decent for a little bit for the short term, I should say, for the next 26 hours or so. It's got some wind shear value to contend with. Hurricane Barbara earlier on in the season did become a hurricane under cooler waters than this. So I do think that it has, though I do think that it has that going for it. Remains to be seen though on how northward it gets and when it will exit those cooler waters. Once they exit those waters, once it gets into those greener waters there, that will become really unfavorable for any more tropical cyclone development at that point, and Juliette will probably cease to be a tropical cyclone here. Surface observations aren't really telling us too much. Looks like some gusty wind in the outer bands of Juliette in Cabo San Lucas there, pressure at 1,014 millibars. So any vacation goers in this area should have an absolutely beautiful weather scene over the next few days as Juliette imparts those gorgeous weather conditions here. Just where I am located, it was a gorgeous weather day here, highs in the mid-70s. So I imagine that it's a pretty similar situation down there, maybe even a little bit warmer. So most of the forecast models, as I said earlier, are pretty set in stone on these storms tracking off towards the west-northwest, where they gradual northward curve here. With the HWR have that blue model run off towards the right there, curving the system back towards the Cabo San Lucas or the Baja California Peninsula here. But of course, if it does end up making it there, it'll be a very, very weak remnant low, maybe producing 20 mile per hour winds at maximum by that point. Still some question marks in the intensity forecast as well. Most model runs as of earlier today were indicating a mid to high tropical storm peak. That was what the National Weather was forecasting. I believe their previous advisory before this one was forecasting 65 miles per hour. Of course, it's almost there now. So a hurricane forecast is pretty set in stone. It's got some wind shear value to contend with, as I said earlier, maybe 10 to 15 knots at the moment. It's going to be dropping in about 24 hours from now, so maybe it takes advantage of that drop. But look at those water temperatures. They absolutely drop off a cliff on the 27th into the 28th. Absolutely drop off a cliff here, although it'll be a remnant low by that point. And a relative humidity, that's going to be a problem as well. It's got some dry air to contend with, especially towards the later part of its forecast track. You'll see the water vapor imagery here in just a few seconds. And here's that water vapor imagery. You can see off towards the north of the storm. You see all those yellows? That is a lot of dry air. It's got that to contend with. But look at what the storm is located right now. Very green, very bluey, very moist environment that it's got in right now. So I imagine underneath all that convection, it's probably got some pretty good rainfall totals underneath all that convection over the Pacific Ocean here. It's probably got some pretty steady, heavy rainfall rates, I imagine. Although not really over any land area, of course. Dry air going to be a problem towards the end of the forecast period, though. But for the short term, not really much of an issue. With that being said, the visible imagery does show the storm trying to get its act together underneath those wind shear conditions. You can see, especially up towards the northwest, you can see those clouds, especially when it compares to the lower levels and the upper levels. They're moving in different directions. So that does indicate some wind shear values are in the area. That is going to be present. That is going to be an issue for the short term. Infrared imagery does indicate that the storm is collapsing on itself, those thunderstorms, that is. Not really going to be a sign of weakening, though. This is pretty standard for those East Pacific tropical cyclones to collapse those storms, and then it produces even more thunderstorms right afterwards. And you can see that sign of those impending thunderstorms towards the southwest of the circulation here. Hurricane Juliette perhaps on the way. We'll have to wait and see on that. Juliette showing us what it's made of over the next 24 hours before weakening ensues underneath those cooler waters.